flows that rose early from yesterday's celebration, I assume that you must have been excited to have a party after 2 years of pandemic. Let's begin. The title will hopefully be explained in the next few minutes. In the abstract, I wrote as if a pandemic were enough, like fishy fish. But I spoke to Shigiri about this invitation. It was about COVID. Since then, another thing has come up. But I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, I was often asked by journalists, how do people cope with this? If it lasts another 4 weeks, or could we have another wave in summer as well? And I remember referring to people that cope with other things, and people coping with other things in other parts of the world. And in my country, in the countries in Europe, they were war. Now we know that there's another war. And since last Saturday, we have every refugee in our country get first-hand reports. But people can cope with the crisis. We are amazingly strong. I often hear that these are not normal times. Indeed. Isn't there this illusion that in the past there was a steady state? The lion was next to the land, everything was okay, nothing ever changed, you might call it paralyze. Of course, that's an illusion. And as long as 2,500 years ago, there was this Greek philosopher, Heraclitus, who pointed out that nothing ever stays the same. Everything is always changing. In his language, which I did not study, I learned Latin but not Greek, paralyze. And there's this famous quotation, no man ever steps in the same river twice. And as you may know, we're constantly changing, our bodies are changing. I have personally about 50,000 atoms from Muhammad in my body, and you get too, and so on and so on. We're all connected, we're always changing, or bringing it closer to music. Unfortunately, not classical music in this case. One of my favorite songs is called "Everything Has Changed," and it's a beautiful version by Randy Crawford that I heard first. Nothing ever stays the same. You need to realize that having learned from previous crises. The past century, La Grande Guerre, the big war, right afterwards, the big pandemic that killed more people in 2 winters than all of World War I. And amazingly, we forgot that people had masks. The Great Depression in the United States, World War II, of course, the financial crisis of 2008, the Euro crisis. I'm talking about the latest refugee crises. What can we learn from that? I will very briefly summarize. First of all, there's an initial resistance response. We become healthier because we're fighting, each of us. And so suicide rate in the Western countries during the pandemic has gone down, not up. And that's the same in the other crises. There's a delayed response, however. It depends on what kind of crisis in what part of the world. Typically 2 to 3 years later, then you begin to see consequences. There's a 1/3, 2/3 rule. 1/3 of the people on average does not do well, and 2/3 do actually amazingly well. This is related to socioeconomic factors. The pandemic, if your life dream is destroyed, your business is ruined, then you may become depressed. The consequences for health of these socioeconomic changes are mediated and moderated by psychological factors, and I will talk about some of those in the next few minutes. Another thing that we hear is, on February 24th, we woke up in a different world. I would like to challenge that again. Did we really wake up in a different world? This is a map of all militarized interstate disputes, aka war, after World War II, up to 2010. The countries with no war are in green. You see any green? degree. In case you're not that familiar with European geography, these are called Monaco and Andorra. And maybe other Greece was somewhere. But the world we live in is a world with war. Black means no data. So we haven't woken up to a different world. We hopefully have woken up to a lifeline. And that's particularly true for the country from where I come. There are some specific challenges of all of this for musicians and their managers. As you know, loss of audiences, loss of income, loss of recognition, loss of practice in classical music, very important. But also loss of meaning and purpose, loss of social contact. And in some cases, not loss, but something comes back, goes from the past that haunts you, like the return of stage fright. Some artists say, I can't breathe, I can't perform. Others say, wow, I don't know, but I will get to face this again. And there are reproaches, accusations. In the case of classical music, they range from escapism to elitism. Bombs are falling, how can you play music? You may remember, however, that even in concentration camps, people would sometimes play music. But these are all issues that you will have to deal with, that you are dealing with every day. So let me talk about the psychology of healthy coping. Whether or not stress is sickening depends on the balance between protective factors and pathogenic factors. And the most important protective factors are resilience and something we call positive mental health, which is more than the absence of problems. I'll show you in a moment. On the other side of this scale, you have stress symptoms, anxiety, depression, and so on. Psychology has dealt with anxiety and how to cope with anxiety. When does stress make you sick? The relevance of perceived control, which is pivotal, which is really central. The basic rules for risk perception. It all is related to subjective appraisal and storage of memory. And then the relevance of society, social connectedness, and lately social media. Let's begin with anxiety. It is meaningful and necessary. We need it. You would be stupid not to have anxiety, and we all have it. There are some minuscule groups, neural effects, where people discuss whether they really experience anxiety or not. But normally, normal person anxiety, and it warns of danger and prepares rapid action, famously fight-flight response. There's also total demobilization as a third response. It's slightly historically inaccurate because dinosaurs and men never lived together, but the basic idea is correct. And I'd like to point out that genetically, we are ancient men. We haven't, our genes almost have not changed since ancient times. We can tell easily by looking at, for instance, body weight. We are made to survive starvation and not supermarket. That's why we have obesity, right? And very few supermodels who, without starving, can stay still. This also refers to our responses to anxiety, to risk, and coping. Anxiety has three components. The bodily component to prepare rapid action, of course. The action itself, behavior, fight or flight. Very often it's flight, very often it's not a response. Not in the case of Ukraine, it seems. And the third component is to be picked, but this person who drew this did a good job, I think. Also about thinking, what we think and what we say. It is about danger, it's about our ability to cope. It's about the future, not the past. Anxiety is healthy. It's a normal stress response, and we need it, as I pointed out. It also occurs in the frame, in the context of bodily diseases. If you have cancer, you're anxious. As I get older, I have more and more people with this experience around me. Fortunately, so far, I have myself. In the case of other mental disorders, and anxiety can become a disorder in its own right, which is one of my specialties. And affects about 1 in 4 people. We are prepared to deal with anxiety. I'm showing you this, and I would like to ask you to make a guess what this is. And it should take you more than 17 milliseconds to decide what it is. These are eyes, and they look anxious. They're very good at that, reading the mind in the eyes. However, there's a question I'd like to ask. Our eyes have a lot of white. Why is that so? Have you ever asked yourself, why do we have all this white space that's good for nothing? Actually, it is good for something. It tells us the direction of our gaze. And that's very relevant for social animals. Our close relatives, the monkeys, but also our ancestors had predators as enemies, typically the large cats. If a leopard encounters a monkey, the monkey has no chance and gets eaten. However, monkeys rarely live alone. They live together in groups. And if a leopard is stupid enough to attack a group of monkeys, he has to run very fast. This picture shows you. He can be very fast, but not very long. And if the monkeys catch the leopard, they actually really tear it to pieces and eat the leopard. So together, we are strong. It's for us important to know what the others are looking at. And this explains things such as emotional contagion. Also explains conformity, which in Western society has a bad reputation, yet has many advantages. Eastern societies know this quite well. So we're deeply social. In perceiving risk, we have a cognitive plan, a master plan, and it's very difficult to not follow this plan. We tend to overestimate everything that we perceive as extraordinary, as unknown and involuntary. This was the case with COVID. It was new. However, we also tend to underestimate everything that we consider everyday, that we consider unknown, and that we do voluntarily. If you do kite flying as sports, very dangerous, but people who do it would say, oh, I know what I'm doing, no danger at all. Yet I can tell you the statistics are clear, it's a high danger. So this is how we do it. Now think about COVID. How we do with COVID now, up on the right side, now on the left side. Psychology of stress. When is stress sickening? It depends very much on your subjective evaluation. Simple things such as how intense and how long. More important, is this relevant to me? If you're afraid of public speaking but you don't have to do it, it's not important. Is it predictable? And most of all, is it controllable? And that's a subjective evaluation. If I think I have control over what's happening, I can take a lot of stress. All of us can. We can take an amazing amount of stress if we think we are in control. It's a totally subjective evaluation. Psychological experiments have shown this. If you do stress tests in the lab, like mental arithmetic, 7,423 minus 13 minus 13 minus 13, as fast as possible, make no mistakes. The person of average intelligence can do this. That's highly stressful for most people. It's called the mental arithmetic test. And if we tell the subjects there's this button here, and if you press it, it stops. You don't have to press it, but you can press it. Everything's fine. Then they are faster, they make less mistakes, they have less cortisol excretion, and so on and so on. Even if this is a button without a cable and no transmitter and so on, it's a thick. And just to make sure, psychological experiments, you can always stop, you don't need a button. Or you have to just get up and go out. You don't have to make an explanation, and there are no disadvantages. That's your good right. And yet this button has a tremendous influence. So it's subjective evaluation, sense of control. And then our experiences are stored in memory, but not like this. Memory is highly dynamic. It's permanently reconstructed. And that follows certain rules. To simplify, you say we have an experience set, an experiencing self is something that Daniel Kahneman said, and a remembering self. We live the moment. Each moment lasts about 3 seconds, and then typically they go away forever. The remembering self is different. We remember primarily things that are very exceptional at the last couple of seconds. So our memory tends to color the story by itself. And I have an example from music. Let's say you listen to a wonderful symphony on a beautiful recording, or even better yet, my example is on the recording. And it's 19 minutes, until minute 18 you are in heaven. And then there's a big scratch, and it ruins the whole experience. And what you will remember is, boy, this was such a bad experience. You don't remember 18 great minutes. You remember the few seconds of And success or failure, or coping with crisis, depends on our decision, whether or not we construct this as a success story or a story of failure. Western society had largely a medium success story in coping with crisis. It could have been much worse. We could have had many more dead people. Yet, we tend to remember all these discussions and all this political struggle and so on. So there's a risk that we will construct this as a story of failure, which will then have psychological consequences. This is one of the things that drove me to do studies when I was in lockdown. We can do online studies. I've been doing this for years anyhow. So these are the countries in which I usually do my studies. And with COVID, what I would like to share with you now would be studies on predicting adaptive maladaptive responses to the pandemic. No, don't worry, I'm not going to get into statistics. And the relevance of mental health. Mortality. The studies that I'm referring to now are in 8 countries that are shown here. Typically have 1,000 people represented for each society. And we found out very early that the willingness to adhere to anti-COVID measures and do things like this prospectively predicts mortality. That's what I show here. One of the few statistics I show. On the left side, you have countries where people say, oh, I don't really think that that is very necessary, and I don't really want to follow those rules. And on the right, you have countries where people say, yes, oh, we will follow those rules. Also, the degree, and then I show you the excess mortality in the next 3 months. This was done in 2020. After the first lockdown, and you can see it's about 80% excess mortality only reported. The real excess will be higher. In countries with low adherence, in countries with high adherence, it's 8%. It's a tremendous difference. There are many factors that influence this, primarily the source of information. Do you read a good newspaper, or do you look in your smartphone? Mental health has an influence, and it's bidirectional. There's something called positive mental health, which is a strong predictor for healthy functioning. Sense of control, I've mentioned. The style of coping, I'll get back to that. Lifestyle, I'll get back to that. And social connectedness. Also, the assessment of government action. And all of this is bidirectional. So, and the willingness to vaccinate, for instance, also relates to this. If you wonder about the cause of mental health, you can test yourself. This is a very brief measure, and it works wonderfully well across a lot of cultures. These are 9 statements. The more you say yes, the healthier you are. Don't worry if you don't say yes too often. It's a normal distribution, right? And you can see it's not an inverted depression scale. It's not, I don't have anxiety, I'm not depressed, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not a schizophrenic, I must be healthy. This is what makes you positively mentally healthy. If you can fulfill your needs, if you are confident much of what I do brings me joy. These are the things that make us healthy. This is something that makes most of us less healthy. The modern digital media, social media in particular, things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We do a lot of research on that. The countries in which we found negative influences are shown on the left. There's one notable exception, and that is Russia. In Russia, it's the other way around. In Russia, social media are the only information channel left that is not controlled totally by the Putin government. So there are people who look into the smartphone are healthier than people that look into the television. But normally in other countries it's different. Short word on narcissism, because for performing artists it may be a topic, it might be a topic for professors as well. Narcissism, I resisted the temptation to show you the ugly face of a past American president who is a full-blown narcissist. Sense of uniqueness and superiority, exaggerated self-love, exaggerated entitlement, self-serving bias. You know, if somebody else speeds on the freeway, it's clear. If I am very fast, that's because I'm important and in a hurry. Right? Attention-seeking, wish for admiration, and superficial charm can cover selfishness, low empathy, high tendency to manipulate others. These are narcissists. There are two versions and more. First of all, let me point out, unfortunately, in Western society, but also in China, there is an increase in narcissism in young people. The vast majority of folks on this world now are selfish. Grandiose narcissism, people would say things like, I like to look at myself in the mirror, I find it easy to manipulate others, I'm a born leader. There's also vulnerable narcissism. Oh, people would be so amazed if only they knew how great I am. Question is, performing artists, some of them in one of these categories, and how difficult is it for you as managers, agents, and so on to deal with these people? So what can we do? What should we do? Do what most people do, wait for a magic pill. Bad idea. Wait until the bombs get closer. Bad idea as well. Do nothing. This is what some governments chose to do for a long time, and you see the consequence of that. How can we promote mental health? A few basic rules, but then Keynote is going to go into more detail. Strengthen the sense of control and predictability. We can do it. This was the really spectacular slogan by Barack Obama, who made some mistakes, as you know. Yes, we can now. We can do it. Promote active rather than passive coping. I will do it, not somebody else will do it for me. Increase self-efficacy. I know I can do this. Promote social connectedness. Together we are strong. And a healthy lifestyle more important than most people think, and much more important than anything. If you get into the professional field, step care is the answer. We can all profit from age-appropriate preventive services. However, if we have problems, we should have low threshold help, and we should respect and detect early warning signs and respond accordingly. And if you have a full-blown mental disorder, there are great treatments available, psychological treatments such as cognitive behavioral therapy. Coping, word on coping, can distinguish between active and passive. Oh, relax, lie yourself, or turn on the television, doing something nice. Makes you feel more tired and less in control. Active coping would be, for instance, it's very healthy, and would be, for instance, movement. This is, by the way, a picture of the winner of our art award, annual art award in 2019. So we're moving, physical exercise. That's the best antidepressant treatment we have, also in the long run. Some of us know this, but unfortunately knowledge is not enough for changing behavior. It's necessary but not sufficient. The Germans on average know what is a healthy lifestyle. It looks like this. act like it. And the Germans are no exception. The British and the others are like that too, and the Dutch. So we all, or the vast majority, have deficits here. Why is that so? Why does our evening look like this rather than like that? This is because our behavior is controlled. Not by long-term probabilistic consequences, but by short-term. We're much more controlled by the consequences of our behavior than we normally assume. And the control comes not from this something that may happen in the future, perhaps, but in 20 years. You know, perhaps Putin will stay peaceful for another 10 years. That would be great. Look, our behavior is controlled by short-term and more or less deterministic consequences. Otherwise, there would be no smokers. Right? Smoking does not make sense. But the negative consequences are the legion, some positive and near distant and almost present. So, when you want to increase your active coping, find short-term joy in what you do. It's feasible. In sports, it takes about 2 months regular exercise before you notice now I really feel like I'm missing something. I didn't do my morning exercise today because I rose and got here, so I'm missing it. Okay, we'll do it tomorrow. Find meaning and purpose is the other thing. And there's a great quotation, which is not by Picasso, but attributed to him. It's a great quotation saying the meaning of life is to find a gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. I think for performing artists, this is something they can relate to very easily. There's a danger coming to the end called hedonic treadmill. We go around in circles, but we adapt to almost everything, amazingly rapidly. Another research finding, if you get married, these are years before and after, you tend to get happier and then you go back to normal. If you're a happy person, you will be happy. If you're a less happy person, you will be less happy. This is also true if you get widowed, fortunately, you get back to normal. It takes a couple of years to go back on. If you get more money, it's all the same, right? The danger of this is to adapt. And so the war is not on the front page anymore. We act as if we have other things that are more important on Instagram and so on. And some of us choose to deliberately ignore them and talk about irrelevant other things. That's a danger. However, I'm optimistic. Our thoughts on the screen are masterful by fate. Humans are active. Information processing beings. We not only have a brain, but also a body and an environment. We change that. We can change it. And our hardware and software influence each other. That's still different from computers. And we have choices, and our choices influence health and disorder. We're not passive victims of disorder mechanisms. So that's a lifelong developmental task for all of us. Thank you for your attention.